Dr. Krista Burris, and I'm here with Dr. Michael Kim at Coachella Valley Direct Primary Care. We're here to talk today about the state of Coachella Valley's coronavirus situation. And today is February 10th. I'm actually going to go close my door. So, Mike, why don't you say hi?
Hi, everyone. So we are been updating everyone weekly on the coronavirus, particularly in the Coachella Valley, but also on things to think about and trying to get information out that's helpful for people because there's a lot of information out there. So I will let Dr. Burr. She is our guru on graphs and information.
So let's start with the first slide. And what you'll see here is an update that the Riverside County has put out about getting a second dose. There's been a lot of concern about what's happening with the county and the second dose. And, I'm glad they finally came up with this, but I am sad that they didn't do this from the beginning so that it was less stressful for people and didn't create as much confusion. But if we go down a bit on this slide, what you'll see is that on their website, they have a chart and it says if you got your first shot at this location on this day, then you have received an email. So, for instance, if you went to the Indio Fairgrounds on January 11th for your first shot, you should have been sent an email to get your next shot. If you, for instance, went on January 23rd, you know that you have not yet received an email and that it's still coming. They have said that they will be vaccinating that second shot up to 42 days after that first shot. That's 6 weeks. So it may be a week or two before you get that email. And then they've also said that if you were vaccinated on one of these included dates and you have not received the email that they say that you have, you can call them to discuss this and they will help you schedule your second dose. So be patient is their primary message, but I am glad to see that they're communicating a little bit better with the public. And so I do encourage, if you got your first dose through the county, that this is a resource to see if and when you have been given an email invitation to that second dose. Okay, so let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, they are running about a week because that's when mine came. And one of our patients said today that they're running about 7 days
behind.
Right.
Yeah. So this here is our daily summary for yesterday, February 9th. And what you'll see is some continued movement in the right direction. We still have a fair number of cases, over 13,000 probable and new cases reported yesterday. But overall, we're heading in the right direction. Let's go down and we'll see here that all the way down, we are still seeing this really nice movement in the right direction. So less cases, our positivity rates are continuing to fall. We're down to 12.9. I don't know if you remember, but it really wasn't that long ago that we were up around 25. So that's fallen half. That's fantastic. So we're still going in the right direction. We're in a bit of a race to beat these new, more transmissible variants with our vaccination rates. We only have probably another couple weeks before these new variants are the predominant strains. So what we should be watching for is over the next month, if our cases start to trend back upwards, we'll know that we're most likely in trouble with these new variants. So we're not quite out of the woods yet. We're still trending in the right way. And that's kind of what to keep your eyes out for. If in 2 to 3 weeks from now, we're starting to see our cases go back up, there's a likelihood that that's what's driving it. So it is important to keep going with masking and social distancing because we need to prevent that additional surge. So let's go to the next slide. This is our District 4 weekly report. So this is the Coachella Valley itself. And I keep an eye on some things like doubling time, and that's going back up. That's great news. It was down in the 30s, and now we're back up to the 50s. Also, our weekly deaths, although quite high at 25 for this week, are actually significantly lower than they've been in the past month. So that's also good news. And if we go down a bit, you'll see our hospitalization numbers are continuing to fall. This is great. Our ICU numbers are also trending downward, which is helpful. Unfortunately, Southern California is still at 0% ICU availability. So that tells you that, yes, we're going in the right direction, but we're nowhere back to what we might consider a low level of transmission. So keep going in everything that we're doing, but we're not quite back down to that low level transmission where we are going to be able to loosen up a bit. So that's it for the slides today. So along those lines of sort of people are kind of, hearing, okay, now more people I know have been vaccinated, our transmission rates coming down, the cases are coming down. Yeah, there's some variants out there, but I don't know anyone who's had a variant, I think people may be sort of in the mood to kind of celebrate and kind of loosen up a bit. So Dr. Kim, how do you think about it in your own life, when you're like so tired of not being able to do anything fun? How do you sort of gauge risk and know when it's time to start sort of re-engaging in some of those activities that you all like to do?
So that's a good question. I think right now, I kind of think of it like, if I'm driving in a car and that temperature gauge is getting up to the, red or high zone, we were at the point where the smoke was coming out the hood and we had to stop the car. I mean, that's where we were back in November, December, no question. So now that the temperature gauge is coming down, I can't take the car and go, great, I'm going to keep going at 65 miles an hour down the road because it's going to go back to where we were. So that's kind of where I am thinking about the pandemic. It is great, the temperature is coming down, but it's still, like you said, we're not even back to our summer levels yet. And we're still pretty high. And so it's good the trends are coming down. It's great the vaccine's rolling out. But I'm concerned because, I went out today to get lunch up at Jimmy John's. And it took me twice the amount of time to get there because there were so many people out and about. And that's good because that's stimulating the economy. But then as a doctor, I'm thinking, well, okay, if they're only 70, 80% careful all the time, that makes me a little worried that we're going to see another spike, like you said, especially if the variants take hold and we're not vaccinating people fast enough. And yeah, that's, we just had the Super Bowl. So how many people actually gathered for the Super Bowl? We're still testing and we get positives, every day or every other day. So, and we're not testing a lot of people. So that's what has me worried. So in my view, I'm glad, I'm happy, but I haven't changed anything that I do. I social distance, I mask, haven't played golf in a year and a half, even though golf is probably the safest sport. For me, we take so many hits during the day and the week because we're doctors. On the weekends, I want to play it a little safer because I don't want to keep taking those hits. Because eventually, the armor will break if I keep testing it too much. So.
Right. I mean, I sort of make risk decisions now, based on that idea of I don't want to increase my risk unnecessarily. So things like when I choose to go to the grocery store, I sort of look for times when it's less crowded. If I can go to a store early in the day before a lot of people have been in the store, I'd prefer it. If I have the opportunity to only send one person into a store rather than like 2 or 3 of us, I take it. Anything we can do to just lower the number of interactions person to person as a population, that's going to actually make a huge difference.
Right.
And I am tired of COVID. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of talking about it. I'm tired of thinking about it. I'm tired of putting my PPE on 40 times a day. I get it. But I think what we need to be telling people is that it's not an on or off switch. We don't wake up one day and say, the virus is over, we won. We're going to gradually come out of this pandemic. And so I know people feel like, well, when's it going to be normal again? And I tell them it'll never be like it was because we just lived through this experience. You may not think the same way that you did 2 years ago, but you are going to feel less constrained. You are going to be back to all the same activities. You may just always be a little more conscious of people around you coughing or people around you sneezing, and that would actually be probably not a bad thing, for us to be a little bit more cautious about avoiding going out when we're sick. Just those types of things may change us as forever.
When do you think you'll be comfortable to go to the movies?
I think when, honestly, when transmission rates are down in the green zone, there's probably nothing that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing. Because if your chance of coming in contact with a contagious person is extremely low, if it's like less than 1 in 500 and you've been vaccinated, I think that there's probably no activity that I wouldn't feel comfortable engaging in. I think even at that level, we could probably stop masking. But that's going to take us reaching herd immunity with the vaccinations, and also maybe being vigilant about updating vaccines for new variants, just like we do with the flu. But time will tell how long that'll take. I'm hoping that by this fall we have something close to that, but it might not be for another year before we're really there. It all depends on vaccine hesitancy, how many people are resistant to vaccines, and how much the new variants mutate and escape vaccine coverage.
Yeah, and I think it's always hard to remember, there's always two sides of the equation: protecting yourself with risks, and then other people. And so, we both got our vaccines, so we're doing what we can. But I also am very cognizant of the fact that I could still probably spread it, and so I don't want to give it to people that don't have that, vaccine, or who might have a problem. And so that's why we need to be vigilant, like you said. So.
I think probably this may change the way I behave with my patients who are very vulnerable for the rest of my career. Like, I may be much more cautious about wearing a mask around my very vulnerable patients to protect them.
Right.
And I might always do that, you know, because this has really been a good lesson on how dangerous we can be to others, even when we're trying to be helpful.
Yeah. Should I show everyone the massive amount of PPE that we actually have to get?
Sure.
Let me see if I can. So, oh, sorry, Erica.
You're fine.
So there is our shipment of PPE, of masks and gowns, and so just to let you know what businesses, not just us, a lot of businesses have to order just to make sure that we're doing our part to keep everyone safe. So it was probably over 10 boxes of stuff. So why don't you talk about, Krista, the things that we have seen with our patients, or the things that are happening with typical COVID, not like COVID toes or, all the rare things, but, what if someone does have COVID, what can they expect?
So there are sort of what I like to call three significant categories of COVID. One is a fairly mild case where someone may have minimal symptoms, maybe no symptoms, and feel better within a day or two, may not even have stayed home from work in the old days, like just a little bit of congestion or a headache, maybe a sore throat. Those comprise, it looks like, about 30 to 40% of the cases. So not a small amount. Like, this is quite a few people have a pretty easy time of it. Next are the moderate cases, and these are people who may not be sick enough to go into the hospital, or maybe need hospitalization briefly, but who are not better in a few days. They may take several weeks to even a month to recover. And there's a subset of both these groups. Even people who've had very mild disease can develop what looks like a more protracted COVID case. And people in this moderate group may also develop these chronic symptoms. And it looks like about 20% of patients overall will develop some kind of chronic symptom. And this is anything from just sort of like fatigue, almost like you have mono or something that goes on for months. Headaches, also things like confusion or brain fog, shortness of breath, chest pain, rapid heart rates, dizziness. And the odd thing about this is that it seems like it comes and goes. People will describe feeling pretty good for a while, and then it, boom, hits them again. And there's still a lot of investigation and studies being done on these particular patients to try to understand why this is happening and what the best treatment is. And almost every week I see a new study that somebody has written, or a paper they've written, sort of exploring a new facet of this. So if this is you, if you're in this category, it's probably good to seek out one of the post-COVID clinics that are being set up around the country, because there is likely going to be some help for patients like this coming out. And so don't suffer by yourself. If you do have the syndrome, sort of look around and see if you can find someone who's sort of in the thick of it, or on the front lines of understanding it. And then the third category are people who've had severe disease. And this would be people who needed either intensive care or intubation, people who may have been in the hospital for a prolonged period of time, who may be going home on oxygen or going home to rehab facilities to get their strength back before they are able to go home. And this is a group of people that looks like often can recover significantly, but who may have some permanent disability, either lung scarring, damage, damage to other organ systems, heart damage, kidney damage. And so there's going to be a fair number of people, who are permanently disabled by COVID, who otherwise would have had, another 10 or 20 years that they were expecting to work, or who may be able to only work part-time or in a different way than they were expecting. So this is probably going to be a population that's going to need additional support as we move forward, both from the healthcare and probably some economic support as well, also for the families, and may need some workplace accommodations. So it's something that I think about every now and then, but it is a large group of people.
Yeah, and then I think in those subsets, mental health plays a portion in any of those that, I think we've seen, all of us have seen an uptick on mental health issues. And so, and I think we have all those three in our own practice, that we've had people with COVID. So we definitely have seen those three categories.
Absolutely. And so I think, as a doctor, I get to see the spectrum. If it's moved through your family and you've only had mild disease, it may be tempting to think of COVID as something like a cold or a bad flu. Unfortunately, it's moved through plenty of families and left behind a greater impact than that. But it is one of those things that I think will mark us as part of this generation that lived through this and affected all of us in some way. And I was just talking to someone today about how none of us are going to get through this without each other, how we really do need encouragement from each other, and that it is entirely normal to be sad or discouraged or angry. These are normal emotions to this type of stressor, trauma event. And so I just want to put that out there. If you're struggling, that's actually really normal, and you are not alone, and you definitely should be reaching out to the people in your world because they probably feel exactly the same as you.
No, I agree. I think from a behavioral health standpoint, this, a lot of people don't deal with grief very well in their life. Whether you're 2 years old and you thought you had a best friend who then no longer says they like you, to your fish dying, to your dog dying, to COVID loss. Life is hard and grief is hard, and we don't move through that a lot of times. And so I think being able to work on how do you deal with loss, because we all had loss with COVID in some way or another, whether it's financial or loved ones or jobs or your time, or you wanted to go here or there. I think it's important, like you said, to start dealing with that. And some people are hit very hard, so definitely talking to your doctor or to a mental health specialist. And then I think a lot of people are right. You gotta optimize your life with more sleep and make better choices. And you know um, you know I'm in a business group, and today the education was on you know think about the positives and the blessings in your life, not the things that you can't do, because then that'll just spiral into what you're missing versus, there are good things that are occurring, even if it's just one. You know, make your life a little bit more balanced and not, oh, why does this always happen to me? So, I think that's kind of how we start moving through this as we are able to do more things, is to hold on to those positives, but don't ignore the other stuff, So be social distant, but say, hey, great, at least now I can go get my hair cut. I can move around these things in a socially distant manner at this point. So
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some wisdom in, acknowledging the losses that we've had, whether it was a expectation or a person, um, and at the same time counting our blessings. I think both are necessary. One is necessary to remind us that all is not lost, but it is important to mark those losses. For our children, they're also watching us and they're experiencing their own losses and helping them grieve those and yet not despair. So yes, this was not the high school experience that my children were expecting or I wanted for them. And yet, and so helping them focus on what positives are in their lives right now, even if there aren't a lot, but just sort of being there with them and saying, yes, this is tough, you know, but it's not forever. And you will have your social life back and you will get back to school and get your friend groups. And, this is coming. This is temporary, like helping to remind them. And actually helping to remind them helps to remind me. So the process of encouraging other people and helping them count their blessings is also comes back and helps you count your own.
no, agreed. Any thoughts as to the question on how local economy can support these groups?
Yes, I'm assuming it means the people who are affected by different COVID. And I think that, looking forward of, there's going to be this large group of people that may need additional assistance. This is actually probably a business opportunity. There may be people who are still going to need to do some, partial work from home or may need assistance with um, errands, this type of thing. There's going to be opportunities always, I think. Um, so for businesses that can move in that direction, this is a potential for them to also grow their business, but also be a help to these groups of people as they come out. Um, so to me, I think, recognizing that there may still be opportunities for meal delivery services. We may actually have all sorts of ways that local businesses can accommodate people and become a support for them, but also become like a business of destination for people who know that that business is going to understand what they need. The services I see immediately, probably things like helping with um, meal delivery, even um, businesses that are available for transport or for helping people who may need connection to other types of services, um, networks of people that could maybe arrange for assistance with home care. This is probably a great opportunity for even people who do yard work to expand their businesses to people who previously may have done their own. There's a lot of ways that there could be an outreach maybe to people in this situation to sort of um, let them know that there are a support within the community that is available to help them with their lives.
No, I agree. I know you. I always talk to you about there's when there's a downside, there's an upside. So when we start going back up, there are going to be industries that are going to be created. And I think, if as a business, as business people, if we can be a little flexible as to, what, how things are going to change, I think we can be adaptable. I always tell COVID has accelerated everything in our life by 10 years, good or bad. And so, I think, if you don't recognize that, then I think we're going to be in trouble in terms of how we as a business deal with it, specifically medicine. And so, we know a lot of doctors' offices that were hurt because they couldn't get people into the door. But we know with primary care, that's not necessarily what makes good medicine.
Yeah, I think that COVID has really accelerated this understanding that your primary care doctor is actually really necessary, and when you can't access them, it sort of puts just a real monkey in the works. If you can't get into your primary care doctor or you can't get a hold of them, you can't get what you need for your basic care, you can't get things ordered, you can't get things coordinated with specialists, it becomes really frustrating. People who couldn't get meds refilled. And I think for a lot of people, it really highlighted the role of primary care, which they may not have seen as clearly before. It was kind of taken away. For a lot of people, they either had primary care doctors that weren't seeing anybody in the clinic, or maybe were even retired or closed their clinics for weeks or months. So I think it did create this moment where the lack of primary care just became really highlighted.
Right. So it brings to me this, instances in my life where when I'm at home and you're out and I'm cooking dinner and I don't know what to do the next step, whatever it is, making pizza or doing this, I can go to Google, but I'm going to get 100 different ways and I'm going to get more confused. But I can just pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, honey, what's the temperature need to be? Where is this? And you're able to say, it's there, let's do this. Hang up, and I'm like, good to go. And so primary care, I feel like, has been that way. Like Google is much smarter than you and I. There's a lot of information out there, but how do you apply it? When do you apply it is really the hard part. So when you don't have access, like you said, to the primary care doctor, you have all these questions, and it really sometimes is just a simple 1-minute conversation. And the person understands and they're happy and they go on. But if not, then it causes all these different problems because they're looking on Google. Everyone is Dr. Google. And so that can cause more problems. So that's kind of how I liken, this is what it accelerates. And if you, like you said, can get access to your doctor in a better way, then you're probably going to overall be able to get a better bang for your buck.
Right. I tell people that Dr. Google is actually written by lawyers. So it's all about not getting sued. So basically, they're always going to tell you that you could be dying or that you could have cancer. Basically, for any symptom at all, it's going to be one of those two at some point that you run into. And you're like, oh, is it really that bad? It's like, I just had a hangnail, having that resource, I think, is, saves a tremendous amount of time and anxiety. It's just,
right.
Do I need to worry about this symptom or not? So I really do hope that we can provide that reassurance for our patients.
No, I do agree. Otherwise, we want to let everyone know to continue social distancing. I know everyone's tired. Our rates are coming down, but again, like you said, Dr. Burris, they're nowhere near the area where we can relax. We're going to bounce right back up if we're not very careful. So I'm optimistic and glad the numbers are there, going the right way, the vaccine's out there, but I'm also very concerned about if you go out, it feels like people are coming out more. And that's okay if they can do it socially distant. But you got to do that 100% of the time. You can't just do it 90% of the time or 80% because that 20% is going to eventually catch up to you. And we just had the Super Bowl. We have Valentine's Day coming up. So
spring break.
Yeah. And then Memorial Day.
Well, Memorial Day is a month at least away, month and a half. So hopefully we'll be at a lower transmission rate by the time we get there, because I think people are going to probably go a little bit nuts on Memorial Day. So my hope is that by the time we get there, our transmission rates have really been driven down, because otherwise we're going to have another summer spike. And I really don't want to go backwards in this. We're moving in the right direction. Let's please stay there. So,
right.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's all we have for today.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Thank you again, Jeff at Swing Point Media. And we'll see you again next week. And are we doing something after this?
I don't think so. Probably next week. We'll talk to Jeff.
Next week. All right. We'll see you next week.